2024 was a year that was marked by allegations of electoral fraud, violations of fundamental rights, and blatant state excesses. And yet, the former Chief Justice Qazi Faiz Isa, who was Chief Justice for most of 2024, was a Chief Justice that was celebrated by the government. One of the most significant judicial moments of 2024 was the letter by the 6 Islamabad High Court judges highlighting executive interference in the judiciary. The majority of the full court heard the reserved seats case. This was a case that went to the core of our democracy and the basic right of the people of Pakistan to have a legislature that represents them. And as we leave 2024, there is a decision of the Supreme Court, a decision of the majority of the full court, which has still not been enforced. 2024 has not been a good year for the judiciary in Pakistan. This is in part because of executive interference in the judiciary, but it has also in certain part been enabled by certain elements within the judiciary itself. 2024 was a year that was marked by allegations of electoral fraud, violations of fundamental rights, and blatant state excesses. And yet, the former Chief Justice Qazi Faiz Isa, who was Chief Justice for most of 2024, was a Chief Justice that was celebrated by the government. And it is an indictment for any Chief Justice to be celebrated by the government when the government itself is involved in such grave injustices. And the former Chief Justice enabled the persecution of a political party, ignored violations of fundamental rights, overlooked executive interference in his own institution, and ultimately enabled the passing of the 26th Amendment. And the legacy of the former Chief Justice will be that the very institutions that he was meant to be holding to account were celebrating him and were celebrating his decisions. And as far as significant judicial moments are concerned, one of the most significant judicial moments of 2024 was the letter by the 6 Islamabad High Court judges highlighting executive interference in the judiciary. And the 6 judges of the Islamabad High Court gave details of interference and intimidation by the executive, particularly in politically sensitive cases. This presented an opportunity for the judiciary to push back against executive interference. And although the Supreme Court took suo motu notice, under the leadership again of the former Chief Justice Qazi Faiz Isa, for all practical purposes, the judiciary did nothing. There was no pushback against this interference, which opened space for even more interference. And ultimately, we were left with a situation where 6 judges of the capital's constitutional court spoke and nothing happened, and interference continues. The majority of the full court heard the reserved seats case. This was a case that went to the core of our democracy and the basic right of the people of Pakistan to have a legislature that represents them. And the majority of the full court set aside the Election Commission's decision and granted the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf its rightful share of reserved seats. However, the decision of the majority of the full court has still not been implemented. It is a dangerous place to reach in any society where court orders are so brazenly ignored. There have been no consequences for the failure to implement the reserved seats verdict, which has further eroded the court's authority. And as was the case with the 90-day election verdict, the failure to implement the reserved seats verdict represents a complete constitutional breakdown. And as we leave 2024, there is a decision of the Supreme Court, a decision of the majority of the full court, which has still not been enforced. One of the greatest blows to judicial independence in 2024 is the 26th Amendment to the Constitution. This has given the executive significant control over the judiciary, and the judiciary cannot judge executive actions, unlawful executive actions, if the executive is controlling the judiciary. The executive has been given a say in constitution of benches. The executive has been given a say in selection of the Chief Justice, and the judges on this constitutional bench currently sit there by virtue of votes by members of the government, and any decision by this constitutional bench will potentially be tainted by the fact that they sit there by virtue of the 26th Amendment, and that they sit on the constitutional bench by virtue of the fact that members of the government have voted in favor of their nomination. And the constitutional bench has also created a situation where there are effectively two Supreme Courts. There is a court within a court, and the constitutional bench is running entirely independently, and it is as if the current head or most senior judge of the constitutional bench, Justice Aminuddin Khan, is effectively running his own separate court. And as far as the average litigant is concerned, there are 2 million cases pending nationwide, and 82% of cases are at the district judiciary level. There has been no genuine reform or no genuine legal reform to improve access to justice and to expedite justice for the ordinary man, or to actually improve pendency of cases. The focus has been to undermine judicial independence and to legislate in a manner that undermines judicial independence. And the legacy of 2024 will be that there was a regime that was legislating and acting in a manner that undermines judicial independence, while elements within the judiciary were enabling the weakening of their own institution. And ultimately, the damage done to the judiciary this year will be difficult to overcome.